Good morning. I've been speaking about space and spaciousness in a kind of mini series of talks. I've given you some practices around breath, body, and phenomena. And when I speak about space, I'm not speaking about the physical space that physics examines, although that's not excluded. I'm speaking about an experiential space. And when we speak about an experiential space, we can observe certain basic differences in how we feel, how we experience ourselves in the world. We can feel narrow and separated at a distance from things or other people, even our own life, or at a distance from our own body. Or we can feel wide and connected and inclusive and receptive, close. Those are all words that have spatial dimension to it. So it's that territory. So then, I speak about space, but spaciousness, because this is there is a directionality in this examination, a kind of transformative directionality. So a couple of weeks ago when I spoke about feeling the partitions of the body, parts of the body, but they're kind of partitioned, I said you can feel your finger in 3 parts. And then you can feel these parts, these partitions of the finger, you can feel them also as merged. Like you would need to bring attention into the finger, so to speak, and then feel its parts, and then feel how you can also feel it as a whole. Well, this is true for the whole body. You can feel the parts of the body, and then you can feel the whole of the body. Now, I don't think you need to expect too much from this. You just kind of bring attention to the body and feel its entirety, like that. You don't expect some, profound thing there. But just the way you can merge the 3 parts of the finger into one space, and you can merge the partitions of the body into one body, you could ask yourself if you need to partition yourself from the world. I mean, when we speak about the world, usually we feel included, right? We're part of the world. My body, mind is part of the world. But when you look out at the world, you're actually separating yourself from the world. I'm here and the world is over there. I spoke about breathing and said we have this tendency to think of the breath as something that's happening locally. It's air enters through the nose into the lung, it gets exhaled from the lung and so forth. But when you sit in meditation, you could do something that we could maybe call skin breathing. By the way, the skin actually is breathing a little bit, right? It's like actually gases are exchanged through the skin. I've read that it's only 2% of the oxygen that we need is coming through the skin, so it's not very much. You know, you couldn't just stop breathing and just take air in through the skin. That's not going to work. But again, we're not talking about physiology. Although it is interesting that the skin is breathing, it's not. The skin connects us as much as it separates us. But there can be a feeling like you are taking breath and energy in through the skin from all sides, from the 10 directions, we could say, or all directions. And you're like filling up from all directions, and you are releasing into all directions. And I compared that to a jellyfish. It's like, experientially, this is like you are breathing with the world. There's a feeling of openness and a feeling of pervading space that pervades you, this body-mind, as much as it pervades any other object or appearance in the world. So I've been speaking about this kind of territory. And today I thought I'd like to speak about the mind, and how we can experience the mind as a space. Suzuki Roshi introduced his American audience to two terms, big mind and small mind. And anyway, I wasn't around in the 60s. But I assume that this American audience that heard about big mind was like, big mind? What's that? Small mind? Big mind? What? These are not terms you heard about in school, or they're not common. Big mind clearly brings with it a sense of space, spacious mind. In small mind, we do know something about small-mindedness. The small mind is kind of like a really narrow aperture, like on a camera, right? It's like it's not letting a whole lot in. Like the setting is such that only certain things can be, taken in by this small mind. So Suzuki Roshi, I think, also spoke about small mind as that which is self-centered. Now, in Zen practice, there is quite a bit of talk and emphasis on noticing your thoughts and this, let's call it the stream of thinking. And our practice is like you sit, set up your posture, and then you notice the thinking activity of your mind. And when you notice that you get caught up in the thinking activity of your mind, then you interrupt that, and you have the intention to bring attention to the breath, say, or just your posture, it's just body sensations. So we're shifting attention from the thinking activity of mind to body sensations. Breath is a form of body sensation. It moves with in a kind of regularity, so it's useful for various reasons to hitch attention to the breathing sensations. And then your attention goes back to your thinking, and then you're caught up there or lost there for a while, and then you bring attention back. So this is very common practice, right? And we instruct it to beginners, and you may be practicing it every time you sit down for meditation. What is happening in this, what is this thinking activity? One practice that I find, and then implied, I'm speaking about this in the context of space and spaciousness, is, how does this thinking activity narrow the space that you're living in? Now, one practice that I find quite useful is to pay attention to the space between thoughts. So, in other words, when you are noticing a thought, I don't know if that really exists, like a thought, like that one thing. Okay, like we need to speak in this way, because language partitions things. Thinking is clearly a process, but we say one thought. Okay, so there's a segment of that thinking process, a thought, and then it's over. And before the next thought appears, what is there? What are you finding there? We could say we find a pause, right? Well, what's the nature of that pause? What is there? Practitioners regularly talk to me about how after so many years of practice, if it's a beginner, the beginner might also say, like, my thinking is just going on and on and on. I can't seem to stop it. Many people talk about this because there seems to be an idea, an implicit desire, and also something that Zen practice suggests to us, that the mind should stop. So when you evaluate what's going on with your own thinking process, you find, like, I'm failing vis-a-vis this expectation that the thinking should stop. So I take this as at face value. Like when someone says this to me, my sense is like, okay, there's a lot of thinking going on in this mind who is reporting this. Okay. And I'm also noticing this expectation that maybe comes from Buddhism, from Zen, but has now been internalized and is leading to let me say this in a provocative way, it leads to some self-aggression. Like, there's something wrong with me. I'm failing. Like, my thinking is just going on and on. There's something problematic about this. What do I do? How do I intervene into this problem? Before you were sitting zazen, you probably didn't have that problem. You didn't have the idea that thinking was a problem. You may have experienced the restlessness and incessant quality of your thinking as a problem. Like, you feel driven by it, you feel, and we talk about it in terms of space, you feel narrowed down by it. It's like you're losing openness and kind of like a permeability. It's like something is locking you down, which is like this almost obsessive quality of thinking. So it has presented itself to you as a kind of lived problem, but you hadn't turned it into a self-improvement project. Like, now you're having this issue. Suzuki Roshi says something interesting in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. He says, don't try to stop your thinking. Don't try to do that. Just call it delusion. I'm paraphrasing, but you'll find it in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind if you read it again. Just call it delusion. It's just delusion. Like, there's some thoughts coming, right? But it's just delusion, no problem. Like that. I find this very entertaining, sort of like, you want to, Buddhism is telling you that delusion is a problem and that we really need wisdom. And then your Zen teacher is saying, well, it's not really a problem, it's just delusion. Don't worry about it. You notice the lightness of touch here? It's like, just call it delusion, then it's not a problem. What does it mean to call it, oh, it's just delusion? It's like, don't be invested in your thoughts. Or as the bumper sticker on the back of a car might say, right? Don't believe everything you think. They're just, what's happening here is just thoughts. You don't have to believe them. Okay, and then we can relax. The problem is, once you believe your thoughts, now you have a lot to work out. Like, why am I believing in them? Should I believe in them? Of course, you have other voices that say other things, and then, like, who's right? And, like, then there are people who say things that are quite different from what you think. Like, what's wrong with these people? What's wrong with me? You've got a lot to do. And that movement of, like, the persuasive power of thought, like, once you accept that thoughts are there to persuade you of some kind of truth, this persuasive power will really involve you, and it will go on and on until you die. There's no end to it. Absolutely no end. You're not going to work anything out once and for all. You're not going to arrive anywhere. And if you do arrive, right, then you feel uncomfortable. It's like, oh, really? This now? Well, Fundamentalism is sort of this posture of really doubling down on arrival. And it's so destructive, because now you have to like fight all the people who rightfully, point out that you're pretty one-sided. They'll say, like, this is pretty one-sided, and you're like, no, you need to die. I mean, this is... when you arrive, then you really are prone to be in conflict. Because now you need to expect that everyone else has to arrive there too. And if they arrive somewhere else, like they are, the infidels or the deluded people or the enemies. Okay, so Suzuki Roshi says, like, just say it's delusion. Just say, like, I would soften this maybe and say, just say, those are some thoughts. This is thinking. And so if we use an intervention like, oh, this is just thought, this is just delusion, then we are actually relaxing out of this persuasive power of thought into, and this is now my question, into what? Now, when this really happened to me for the first time, I didn't have that question at the time. I was just sitting. But if I had the question of like, what is this pause between thoughts? What is the space between thoughts? I can remember very vividly, I was actually sitting, which was unusual, with a different Sangha in a weekend sitting. And I was sitting there, and then it felt like this doesn't have to be that way for you. I'm just reporting how something about my experience. It felt like there was a kind of balloon opening, and I was in a silent space. Thought had just stopped. I didn't try to stop it. It just had stopped. And what happened was it's like as if like a balloon opened and I was in it. It was just silent. Now, when something like this happens to you for the first time, what's quite typical is that the mind will try to appropriate that experience and make sense of it, or if you're a Zen practitioner, you say, something happened here that's probably quite important. And then you appropriate that experience, and then the experience is gone. Why? Because you just replaced it with a thought. You just made something out of it. So the thinking mind got active in relationship to the experience you just had. Yeah, does that make sense? This is a common problem. So it's I'm just going to use this image. Whether that is true for you, you may have your own image, but for me, this this balloon opens, and then it's like you kind of need to just rest there, or appreciate that. Stay there. Don't evaluate. There's no, this, when thought grasps it or appropriates it, it's like you are coming out of the experience and then are looking at it almost from the outside. And so it's like, you kind of, you want to find a way, and it's like, how how can I say that? It's a relaxation. It's like there's no need to think about it. By the way, this makes me, it's a little tangent related, hopefully. It's just thoughts coming into my mind. It's just delusion. Sorry. There's a tendency in us to need to think about our experience to make it real. Have you noticed that? It's like you have an experience, but you make it real by thinking about it.
Or taking pictures.
To just be in the experience and appreciate it without thinking about it is kind of it seems like a Zen quality, but it's kind of rare. Now I look at practices like, say, keeping a diary. This is something really old-fashioned, but let's say people keep a diary, right? That is like turning this tendency into an actual process. Like every day you write down what you've experienced. And you make it real that way, real to yourself and posterity, potentially even. Like somebody can read your diary and say, like, that's what this person's life was like. Nowadays, the diary has been externalized and, well, the diary is already externalized, but now it's like, that place has been taken by social media. So, taking pictures. And I really think that for many people, it now feels like if it's not posted, it's not real. That, if you're older, you may not have that feeling. But if you're younger, I think it's like, it's the way you are noticed and you are participating in making experience real. So in the diary, you're just sharing your experience with yourself, right? Now you can also share it. It used to be that only people who knew how to write could share their experience with others. They're like writers and novelists and so forth. They're fictionalizing experience and so forth. And we had some expectation that it has quality. It's like now everyone can just share everything at all times. So I'm not delivering a cultural critique. I'm just saying that we can find in ourselves the tendency to make, this is an imperfect way to say it, but make experience real by capturing it with thought, with a camera, posting it, turning it into discourse, basically. And this withholding, the withholding of doing that is what I'm talking about. It can be withheld. It can just be taken as it is. So you can look at a flower. I don't know why I'm inventing a flower. Just look at what's here. They're flowers. But you just look at something and let that just be there, and there's no thought about it. In your sitting practice, your breath can be that way. You can just let your breath be the way it is. You don't have to think about it. Is it shallow? Is it deep? Is it right? Is it wrong? It's like, no, it's just there. And you feel it. And that's it. And so when I ask, what are you finding between the thoughts, like an immediate... And look, I'm not asking you to find words. I'm asking you to attend to that space. Whether you have words or not is like completely secondary. I need the words to point you to it, but we don't need words for that. In fact, we want to leave the words aside. So what are you finding? You're finding space. You're finding a silent space. The more you're comfortable with not appropriating your experience, the more you can hang out in that silent space. Your mind will be quiet. Not because you're making it quiet, not because you're suppressing thought. It's just like you're comfortable. You're just comfortable hanging out there. It's no big deal. And you're not achieving anything. One view is that it's not like you're making a different mind or something, or a new mind appears. It's like that mind is already there. It's just that thought as an activity happens to take a pause. And then this silent, still mind comes to the foreground. Suzuki Roshi also famously said in the beginner's mind that in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. This silent space between thoughts, you could say is beginner's mind, because you don't know what comes next. You don't know. It's like if you watch out, like what's the next thought? You can't predict. It just comes. Something else will come. And then you're like, oh, that's coming now. In the expert's mind, sort of like, I'm thinking now in the context of what we're speaking, is like the expert is like caught up in the persuasive power of thought, and it's just always like jumping from one thought to the next and stringing it together. And if the expert is doing it well, there's some logical consistency and like a picture awry, and you build an edifice of thought. You build an edifice of thought, like something seemingly stable, which has no substance at all. We're pretending that some like thought form has some substance. It doesn't. I mean, you write it down, otherwise it doesn't have any substance at all. Like, I wrote a book. I mean, I don't know what's in there. I mean, I roughly know, but if somebody like took the book away, right? Like I never can look at it again, and says like, write it again, I'd be like, okay, well, geez, do I remember all the chapters? What all did I say? And then I have to do it anew. And now I have to and I would do it differently because something has already changed. I'm not satisfied with what I said 5 years ago. Some of my views have changed, or like I would like to say it differently now. Like this formulation is a little clunky or something. There's nothing stable about this. I mean, it appears stable. Okay, now let's contemplate something different and related. If I asked you, where are your thoughts coming from? And where are they going? You have an answer? I'm not really actually asking you to give an answer. I'm just asking you to attend to the question. Now here's an to me interesting observation. See if it's interesting to you. But I think we have a tendency when we investigate something like where's the thought coming from, right? We have a tendency to think in causal chains. Like if you have something, it must have come from somewhere, and there must have been a process that resulted in this thing that you're investigating. This is quite useful, we can do science that way. There must be a cause. So you find an explanation. So one thing that we do, I think, is we assume that there's a mind. Like if you have to give an answer to the question, we're not in school, so you don't have to give answers. But if you did want to give an answer to, it's like, where are your thoughts coming from? Like there's some obvious candidates that you could use for, like, to give an answer, like the mind, or consciousness, or the self. Because we do have this idea that there is a thinker that is thinking the thoughts. And then we make that thinker into ourselves. Like, I am thinking this thought. I'm doing the thought. Right? And you have certain, an unconscious person can't think or can't remember anything. Try to wake them up. Hey, are you there? Nobody's home. Like, okay, the thinker somehow has disappeared. At least the speaker. So, if you ask about the source of the thought, you could say, like, it's the thinker, it's the self, it's consciousness, it's the mind, and then you have these, like, you think now that there is an entity that is producing the thought. If you sit in meditation, like, I don't think we can do it so well here, but maybe if you're attuned to this kind of investigation, you can just do it while I'm talking. Or pausing. If you allow a thought to come, and you have this question of, like, where is it coming from? I mean, the obvious answer is it's coming from nowhere. It just appears. You're not doing anything. You're not doing the thinking. And where is it going? Is it getting stored somewhere? Is there a receptacle of thoughts from which you can pull out a thought and put it back in or something? No. It's also not going anywhere. For example, I thought about, like, how can you make this, is there any kind of physical parallel to this? And then I had this idea that in Zen, the mind and thoughts are often compared to the sky and the clouds. Right? You're getting a meditation instruction, and somebody says, let the thoughts just come and go like clouds in the sky. Clouds are pretty slow in comparison to thoughts. So I don't know how far this simile carries, but let's just take it. So the clouds are like the thoughts, and the sky is like the mind. Are the clouds coming out of the sky? No. there's a whole complicated process that makes clouds. Like there's water and there's heat and there's wind and, like, anyway, you can imagine the evaporation, and then there's temperature differentials and clouds form and they drift in the sky and so forth. It's like, it's really real complicated. It's not like the sky is doing something. But we could, there's all kinds of ideas where people say now, like, the mind and the brain are the same thing. Like, there's these electrochemical things in the brain, and that's really what your mind is. It's like, yeah, but we're not doing that kind of investigation. We're studying our experience as it is. So you'll never experience your brain. You're not experiencing electrochemical. You always can do that at another brain that you can measure up or something. But in your own experience, there's no brain. You've never seen your brain or the electrochemical stuff that's going on in there. But we could say, like, the way the clouds are made, it's just like there's water and rivers and, moisture and heat and evaporation and so forth. Maybe that's like parallel to what's like the way the brain is cooking up thoughts. But when you look up at the sky and a cloud appears, it comes out of nowhere. It's just like, whoop, so a cloud is there. In our thoughts, I like that. And you wouldn't say the sky is making the thoughts. So why do you say the mind is making the thought, or the self is thinking the thought? It's not the case. So what I think is a shift that is really important is to shift yourself away from the idea that you are doing thoughts, thinking thoughts, to a mind, that the mind is a space that allows thoughts. The thoughts are coming from nowhere, and you just allow them. You just let them happen. And if you get too identified with the thoughts that are happening, right, then you could say, it's just delusion. It's just a thought, just a cloud, Like, don't know how that came here. So the sky is hosting the clouds, and the mind is hosting the thoughts, allowing them. Okay, so now we can take another turn here and say, is there a difference between the mind and the thoughts? I was just making that distinction. I was saying the mind is a space and the thoughts are the contents that are appearing in that space. So we're making that distinction, but is it necessary to make that distinction? Because, look, you may learn to not identify with your thoughts. You are stepping back into the mind space. Be like you're stepping back from the clouds into the sky. You see yourself more as the sky than the clouds. You're seeing yourself as the mind space that allows rather than the thoughts that are appearing there. Like the mind space basically has this sense of like, just delusion, just clouds. But now you identify with the space of the mind. Now that's the real you. Now I'm that space. You come in opposition to the contents. I mean, I said this in the beginning, it's like once you practice Zen, you may have contentious or even aggressive relationships with your thoughts. You may say, they shouldn't be here. I want to be a clear sky, not one with clouds. I want to get rid of the clouds. Okay, so it's kind of nice how far this analogy with the sky carries, really, it's like, can you expect a sky that will never have any clouds again? It's not going to happen. Can you expect a mind that's not going to have thoughts again? No. And nor would you want to. You're a human being. You need thoughts. Suzuki Roshi said, in discussing this relationship with the terms big mind and small mind, he says, small mind is just an expression of big mind. Again, in this image is that the sky expresses itself through the clouds. Our open, empty mind expresses itself through its thoughts. Now, if you clamp down on this as yourself, you may not like certain thoughts that appear, like as if they don't belong to you. But they do. I'm so sorry. You are not in control. They do belong. You have awful thoughts. You don't need to act on them. You can recognize them as just delusion, but they will come. And you don't know why. They just come out of the, out of the rivers and oceans of your life. I mean, the way to find a Zen mind is to allow it all. Just allow it all. Just let it come. People always say, I have said this quite often, people always want to let things go. I always say, just let it come. That's the way to let it go. When you don't let it come, you're in opposition. There are parts of you that you don't like. Let them come. They're there. You're not going to do anything about that. They will come. Like Suzuki Roshi says, when you don't try to stop your mind, it will calm down. It's like the thoughts peter out. When you have like these rebellious parts in you that you don't like, let them come. So then when they feel seen and respected, then they can calm down. They don't have to act up. They don't have to take over your life and show you all the time that they're there. So we could, like, if you are willing to see your mind, that you're still silent mind that opens up like a balloon, if you can, like, rest there, and then you can let a thought come, you can see, it actually doesn't come in, it comes out, right? It's not like the thought moves in from the left and leaves to the right. It manifests. It's an expression of your mind space. It blooms, kind of. And then it wilts. And your posture wants to be something like to just let that happen. And if there's less resistance to that process, then it's not going to be so frantic. It is so difficult to understand what Zen, Soto Zen in particular, is about, but I think we've just actually explored it with some depth, experiential depth. The instruction in Soto Zen, the way I understand it, is yes, you sit, right? It's in any life situation, and you allow your experience to be exactly what it is at this time, meaning as it arises. You allow. You take away the opposition. You stop fighting against your experience. And as you allow, it calms down. And and when you find yourself feeling that you need to intervene with your pain, with your experience in any regard, with your breath, with your thoughts, you relax out of that compulsion. You let it be. You let it come. You let it bloom just as it does. But you are the space in which that happens, and the space is undisturbed. That's the posture. Now you may say, like, well, but then I have all these experiences that are so awful. Yes. You've got awful thoughts, you've got awful pain, you've got awful feelings. Not all the time, but sometimes. So what? You don't have to act on them. You just need to be willing to experience them. And then they can calm down. Everything can calm down. And you will find more spaciousness. And out of that spaciousness, you may even decide to act on certain things, and then that's not excluded. You could do something about your pain, or you can do something about certain, motivations in your life. This is not forbidden. It's just you're going to do it from within a spaciousness, much less driven, much less frantic. That's the promise. So you want to appreciate this spaciousness. When it does come, when it shows itself in your meditation process, savor it. Savor the particular kind of freedom that is there. It's not a freedom to do anything you want. It's a freedom to experience everything that comes. Now, we've just talked about a mind space, right? But what Suzuki Roshi calls big mind is actually your whole experiential space. It's not just the thought space. It's also everything that's happening in the world. Our initial posture is to allow it to happen. There's nothing in the world is opposed. I recently talked, and then coming to an end, although there's lots to explore here, but we'll have Q&A. I've recently talked about a sense of contractedness and control with a couple of people. And so we can feel contracted and narrow, right? And my feeling is that has a lot to do with the need to control our experience. We're contracting away from something, and we're holding on to something, and we're trying to control what it is that is our experience. And this is also the problem with widening out and making yourself spacious and allowing everything, because it can feel like a loss of control. And what is the opposite of control? I would say it's trust. You trust that what's happening is fundamentally okay. And this includes difficult things, illness and death and all, everything we really want to avoid. And it is really a letting go of, or a forgetting of self. Like the self is a big contraction. It's me here, separating from, and as you relax that, you're allowing, like skin breathing, but now in a much wider sense, you're allowing the arisings and appearances of the world to be in communication with you and shape you too. And let your life unfold in response to those happenings that, if we're honest, we're just not in control of. We have some participation in how we we have some freedom in how we relate to those happenings. And that's something we can find out, what it is that we want to do in relationship. Thank you.